Sheds are the ultimate secret weapon for home gyms. That's something that we've talked about a lot on this channel in other videos. So the question for today is, in 2025, should you buy a shed or should you build one yourself? And coming from a guy who built this entire 12 by 20 home gym shed on my own property completely DIY, my answer might actually surprise you. What's up, guys? I'm Cody with Backyard Shreds. I help you build epic home gym sheds in your own backyard. And I get men in the best shape of their lives with my 12-week fitness group called The Brotherhood. More on that on the website. For now, let's talk about sheds. Should you build it? Should you buy it? Honestly, I have watched a bunch of videos about this topic with this title on YouTube, and I've just found them to be lacking something, or just very biased one way or the other. My goal for this video is to make it the most unbiased, honest, helpful, comprehensive video on this topic and genuinely help you make the best decision. With that in mind, here are 9 things that you need to consider when thinking through whether to buy or build a shed. The biggest factor, of course, is going to be cost. And for the sake of clarity, in this video, we're talking about the cost of just the structure. We're talking about just the cost of the structure, not all of the interior finish, the electrical, the drywall, the flooring, the ceiling, all that kind of stuff, since that's going to be an expense that you're going to have whether you build it or whether you buy a shed from a dealer somewhere. Just looking at the cost of the structure itself, should you buy it or should you build it? Price becomes a big driving factor of that decision. This was honestly the biggest driving factor for me when I decided to build my own shed versus buy. I started looking at the cost of available sheds to buy them from a dealer and get them delivered or to have them built on site. And I realized very quickly that I could build something comparable or even better quality than what was available for much cheaper. In fact, somewhere around half the price. Some of the next videos I plan on making on this channel are going to be looking at a detailed price breakdown of the exact cost of materials to build something like what I'm in right now. Since my home gym is a 12 by 20 footprint, let's just compare some prices of a 12 by 20 shed just so that we have a starting point. For the 12 by 24 plan that we sell building plans for over at backyardshreds.com, the price comes out to about $7,500, give or take, depending on where you live and the price of materials at the moment. About $7,500 to $8,000 in materials for a very sturdy, exceptionally well-built home gym shed. By the way, that includes the price of paint, that includes the price of caulk, that also includes the price of 4 inches of gravel for a base underneath your shed. So all of that is included in less than an $8,000 price tag to build it yourself. Let's compare that to the price tag for buying a shed. Now, prices vary quite a bit for buying a shed, depending on where you buy it, where you're located. Just to get a starting point, let's look at a brand that everyone knows and recognizes that is pretty much nationally available as well, which would be Tough Shed. For a similar 12 by 20 footprint and a similar design to what we have at Backyard Shreds, it's gonna cost you about $15,000. Literally double the price compared to if you had built it yourself. One of the things that makes it hard to compare price exactly is trying to find an apples to apples comparison, because there is an element of you get what you pay for, in the sense that you can spend $2,000 or $20,000 on a shed and you're going to get $2,000 worth of building and construction quality or $20,000 worth of construction quality. To compare apples to apples, let's look at a more premium model, because this is going to be a home gym or a home office where you're going to be spending a lot of time. You're going to finish it, insulate it, put electric in here. You're going to put nice equipment, either nice gym equipment or maybe electronics for your home office. So we want something on the nicer end of building quality. Heartland is another respected shed builder that I found online, and they have a couple 12 by 20 options that are a bit cheaper than Tough Shed, but they have very, very limited or no customization for those sheds, whereas Tough Shed lets you put doors, windows, however, wherever you want, and Tough Shed does give you the option of using residential quality doors and windows, which is something that you definitely want for a shed that you're going to be finishing with insulation and drywall. Heartland did have a 12 by 20 model available for only $8,000, which is a great price, but they didn't have any doors or windows with that model, and it didn't seem like there were any options to add doors or windows, and it only had shed doors, which are not going to work for you to insulate and use this space as a home gym and home office, in my opinion. The second big consideration is time. How much time do you have? How much time do you want to spend on this project? And like everything in life, you can spend time on it or you can spend money on it and have it faster. The age-old dichotomy of time versus money, and really it comes down to which do you have more of right now? If you have more money and less time, then you're probably not going to want to spend all of your time in a construction project. No brainer. But if you have the time and money is tight, then as we just discussed, this might be a big deciding factor for you. It was for me. I had more time and less money available to spend on the shed, and so I wanted to build it myself. The smarter way to think about this is not just how much time do I have or how much money do I have, but really what is my time worth in a project like this? Because essentially when you're buying a pre-built shed, you're just paying for someone else's time to build the shed for you. Now, when it comes to time, you should also think about not just the amount of time spent actually doing the construction project, but the overall timeline of the project itself. How long is it going to take you to complete this project, and how long do you want to wait until you have a finished building that you can use for working out or for your home office or whatever you're doing with this shed, right? So if you don't have a lot of time available, it may take you quite a while to work on this on weekends or in the evenings to get this shed completed. That said, some of the main shed distributors have a lead time on their deliveries anywhere from 1 week to 2 weeks to up to 6 or 8 weeks. So even if you ordered a shed today pre-built, it still may not arrive for a couple months, which means you might actually have a finished product sooner if you have the time available to just go out and buy the materials and build it yourself. The third thing to consider is customization. Now, it seems to be a rule across all the different shed options that I've looked at online that the more customization you want, doors, windows, build quality, etc., the more the price goes up. Here are things that I would want to customize or think about customizing for my own shed, especially if I was going to use it as a home gym or home office. Probably the most important thing is residential quality doors and windows, meaning you don't want a shed door that's just some 2x4s and some siding with hinges. That's not going to cut it when you actually come to insulate your space and put heating and cooling in there and put expensive gym equipment or expensive electronics for your home office. Residential doors and windows, non-negotiable. You gotta have those. Another thing I would want to customize is the floor strength, especially for a home gym. With the building plans that we sell at backyardshreds.com, the floors are all rated for 120 pounds per square foot, which is triple what the average house floor is rated for, around 40 pounds per square foot. And that's about what you'll find in most sheds as well, is about 40 to maybe 50 pounds per square foot rating. That's something I'd pay close attention to if I was getting a framed floor, especially instead of a concrete pad. Also, for a gym, having tall sidewalls or at least the center peak height is something that I would pay attention to as well. I would be thinking about how tall that equipment is that I want to put in there, how much overhead space I need for things like pull-ups or overhead press with barbells. I'm 6'3", so stuff like that matters. That's another thing that I specifically designed into our building plans at Backyard Shreds, is an 8-foot high rear wall and 10-foot high front wall So there's plenty of overhead space for you to do things like hang a punching bag or hang rings or do pull-ups or press overhead without having to worry about space. Another customization is the wall framing. Some of the cheaper sheds have 24-inch on-center wall framing, or they have single top plates. You can get away with 24-inch on-center stud spacings, but 16 on-center stud spacings is standard in the home building industry. That's what we've designed our building plans around, and that's what I would recommend looking for in a quality built shed. Another big customization is insulation in the floor, and that's kind of a pros and cons thing with building it yourself versus buying a pre-built shed. Is if you plan on insulating it, it's going to be a lot harder to insulate the floor after the shed's already built. As you're building it yourself, it's very easy to add insulation in between the floor joists before you build the rest of the shed. But with a pre-built shed, you're going to have to lift it up on blocks or something like that to get underneath it to add insulation from the bottom. And that's a little bit trickier, so that's something to think about. Fourth consideration is the skills required to build a shed. If you're the type of person that can barely hang a picture frame, then probably building an entire shed is not the best idea for you. Also, you got to think about your physical ability because it's a construction project. So it's going to take a fair bit of strength and physical mobility to climb ladders, lift boards, and things like that. Now, if you're building this for a home gym shed, you're probably interested in fitness and you're probably able to get around pretty well. So I imagine that that's not too much of a trouble. But if you're watching this and thinking about building a shed in general, yes, you got to think about, am I able to do this entire project? Because it can be a little bit rough on the body when you're doing manual labor like construction. That said, if you're relatively handy and you're good at learning new skills when it comes to working with your hands and things like that, then when it comes to building a home gym shed, it's actually not that difficult, especially if you have really good building plans that walk you through the entire construction process step by step. That's the thing that I wish that I had when I had built mine. I spent months researching and drawing plans and learning all of this stuff. That's why I ended up creating the building plans that I talk about in these videos. I wanted to make a resource that would take everything that I learned and everything that took me months to figure out and boil it down into one single download that you could read through and get started in a weekend. If this resource had existed when I was building my own home gym shed, it would have sped up the process enormously and been a huge, huge help. So my goal was to create the resource that I wish I had when I built my shed. Fifth consideration is tools and equipment. What kind of tools do you need? What kind of equipment do you need? If you're going to build a shed, yes, you're gonna need some new tools, but the reality is that the actual amount of tools that you need is probably less than you think, and they're available at different price points. So from a budget perspective, this isn't a huge barrier. In fact, if you're a homeowner who does occasional DIY projects, there's a good chance that you already have a fair bit of the tools that you need on hand. And if you don't, probably you're going to need these tools for different things eventually. So this is just a good excuse to convince your wife that you do need those new tools. Speaking of tools, I recently made a video for the channel talking through all of the tools that are must-haves for a building project like this, and the extra nice to have tools that you should consider getting as well that will make your life a lot easier. Number 6 is quality and durability. Now, this could have gone under pricing, I guess, but I decided to make it a separate point. But ultimately, when it comes to buying or building a shed, you get what you pay for. You could spend $2,000 or $20,000 on a shed, and the build quality and construction quality and the material quality itself is going to vary quite a bit. So when you look at cheaper shed options, there's usually a reason why they're so cheap. They're cutting corners somewhere. They're using cheaper grade lumber that's got more flaws and knots and twisted and things like that. This isn't just for storing weed whackers and lawnmowers. You're actually going to finish this interior with drywall, so that does matter. This was actually a big deciding point for me as well when I went to build my own shed. I looked at even some other brand name shed options, and I just was not very impressed with the craftsmanship. and the quality of materials used in those sheds. There were gaps, the boards, things weren't quite level, things weren't quite square, and I just like things to be nice. And I knew that if I built it myself, that I could have better control over the selection of the materials and the lumber. I could build it a little bit more heavy duty. I could build it a little bit nicer. I could use bigger boards, thicker plywood, thicker OSB, and all of those are factors that I've designed into the building plans on Backyard Shred's website as well. I want it to be nice. Number 7 is space and size. When you're buying a shed from a dealer, a lot of places like Tough Shed and other dealers, they've got lots of different options for different sizes and floor plans. So that gives you a lot of options. When you're building it yourself, if you are buying a building plan that you're gonna follow from the internet, then sometimes you're a little bit more limited, I think, based on the other options that you're filtering for in those building plans. You may not have quite as many options for floor plans and different sizes of sheds where the doors and windows are, and you may have to modify those plans a little bit. As of right now, the building plans that we have over on the website come in 3 different sizes: 12 by 12, 12 by 16, and 12 by 20. Those are the 3 different footprints that we have. I made a video recently that you might find interesting, showing different ways to lay out fitness equipment for different types of workouts in those different size sheds, those different floor plans. So I'll link that at the end of the video as well. You can check that out, and that'll give you some inspiration as far as how much space you want, how much space you need, and how you can lay out your equipment in a shed. The 8th thing to consider is building permits and building codes. And I'll be honest, when I first started my journey into figuring out building my own home gym shed, this was one of the things that stressed me out and scared me the most, was trying to figure out building permits. And it's really not that hard or that complicated, but for me, it seemed scary. Just something that I had never really done and didn't know how to do. And honestly, I didn't find a lot of helpful information about navigating that process online on YouTube or elsewhere. So I did make a video on this channel walking through the entire building permit process and how to navigate that if you're going to do that yourself. And I have, in every premium and elite bundle of building plans on the website, I have a detailed building permit guide that shows you exactly how to fill out a building permit form with the typical information that they ask for, and it includes the architectural drawings that you often need to get those permits accepted. The nice thing about buying a shed is that often the dealers or the installers will actually handle that permit process for you. You can usually either do the permits yourself or you can pay them to do it for you. So it is nice to have that option where you don't have to worry about it. The last point is honestly just personal satisfaction. Ultimately, regardless of time or money, what do you want to do? Do you want to build it yourself? For me, I really wanted the challenge and the learning opportunity of building this shed myself. Personally, I've always dreamed of building my own house someday, and I don't know if that'll ever happen, but I knew that if I built this shed, I would learn all the fundamentals that basically go into building a house, from the foundation to the framing to the flooring and the siding and the windows and doors and the roofing and all of those different things, even the electrical and the finishing inside with the flooring and drywall and lighting and all that kinds of stuff. I had a blast learning all those different things and doing it. And quite honestly, every time I walk into this shed, I feel an immense sense of pride that I built this. I built this entire thing. My fingerprints are all over this, and I built it. It's also a super fun summer project to do with your friends or your family, maybe your parents or your kids. For me, I've got amazing memories of a summer a couple years ago when we built this, working alongside my dad building this together, some good friends of mine that came to help out, and even my 3-year-old son at the time. Some amazing pictures of him wearing a little hard hat with his tool belt. And those memories are really, really cool. But here's the thing, even if you decide to buy a shed, there's still going to be plenty of opportunity finishing out the inside of it with flooring and drywall and the ceiling and the electrical and the lighting and all that kind of stuff and the design. You're gonna have plenty of opportunity to turn it into a DIY project and have fun with it and get your hands dirty and get your fingerprints all over that space and make it yours. So really, either way, it's up to you and what you want. All right, so let's wrap this up with a quick summary of pros and cons. First, let's look at the pros and the cons for building it yourself. On the pros, a lower overall cost if you do it smart, more customization over the specs and design, especially for a home gym, better quality control over materials, learning new skills in carpentry and construction, and the personal satisfaction of knowing that you built it all yourself. The cons, it can take more time depending on your availability and your help. It's physically demanding and can have inherent safety risks in a construction project, making mistakes in the building process if you're unskilled or not following a good set of plans can be costly and even unsafe if the building is not structurally sound. You're going to have to spend some money on tools. Arguably, I think that goes in the pros category, but that's just me. There's no warranty. Sometimes if you buy a shed from a dealer, they come with warranties. If you build it yourself, you don't have that luxury. And another con to consider is the risk of burnout. Maybe you get started with the project and it becomes a much bigger thing than you anticipated and more than you bargained for, but you're already halfway through, you've already spent the time and money on materials, and now you're kind of stuck in the middle of this. So that's something to consider as well. Now let's talk real quick about the pros and cons of buying. For the pros, potentially a faster and easier setup with some options being ready in as few as a couple days. Professional quality craftsmanship and skilled labor building it, theoretically. Possible warranty or customer service, help with building codes and building permits. A big one is also a predictable timeline, knowing exactly what to expect. A final pro for buying a shed is the availability of financing. And the cons of buying a shed, it's definitely more expensive, and there's still often a lot of hidden charges and fees and taxes that you have to pay that you're not expecting and not calculating into that price. It may not be ideal for gym use, especially the floor strength, ceiling height, things like that we mentioned. Less control over material quality and craftsmanship, possibly less personal connection with the overall project in space. And finally, for the cons of building is that it still requires quite a bit of work. You're gonna have to finish out the entire interior anyways. You're gonna have to prepare a base like gravel or concrete because the shed company is just going to come and deliver it on top of whatever is already there. So you're gonna have to do that. Things like painting and caulking are usually things that you're going to have to do after the shed's delivered anyways. So still quite a bit of work left even if you go the buying route. So should you buy or should you build? Well, ultimately it comes down to your budget, your time, and what you want. And if you are thinking about building or buying a home gym shed, I would love to hear your ideas, your questions, your thoughts, and your plans in the comments below. Let me know about it and I would love to help you however I can. And if you are, then definitely check out this next video where I explore creative ways to fit different types of workout equipment for different exercises in various shed sizes. I think you'll love the video. It'll give you tons of ideas. Thanks for watching. I'm Cody with Backyard Shreds, and until next time, go build, lift, and grow.